We were living in Athens for a period of time. Obviously, the financial situation in Greece has been very difficult, so we decided let's move to the island. We set up a 3-year project, which was to make wine for the first 2 years in Athens and then build the winery here and to move the whole family and live here full time, hopefully. Wine had always been a part of my life and something that we together had appreciated a lot since living in London and in Athens. And at some point I always remember saying I'd like to have my own winery, but I was going to wait until I was 40 years old, and at some point Eileen and my father basically said, why wait, let's move forward. And so it was a 3-year project, essentially creating a brand and to see if there was a market for the white variety that we started with first, with Serfiotiko from Syros. And we did. We saw in the first year, we made 1,500 bottles and we sold out very quickly. So we saw that certainly there's a market for what we're doing. What we're seeing now within Greece is the client, the consumer, and also abroad are looking for rare indigenous Cycladic varieties. Something different, something which you know, each wine from what we've seen and what we've done this year has its own personality. The white tastes completely different to another white, which is maybe using the same rare variety from another island. And the same with the rosé, with the Focchiano. And our idea, or our strength, we feel, is to work with rare varieties and to do something different. We don't want to do exactly what everyone else is doing.
It's amazing to bring up your children in such a natural environment. This is wonderful. Our 3 kids are running around, they play in the neighborhood, they're in touch with the whole process of wine making, from picking the grapes to pressing the grapes to actually bottling. They know they're becoming little experts in wine. And for me, I'm an artist, so I teach art in schools. I have my own art center in Posidonia, where I do open art education programs for children and adults. So we've got this amazing combination of living in a natural environment, but working with wine, working with art, and
dogs.
And dogs, and so I think it was one of the best decisions we've made in our life.
What we like about being here is that every day is different. The cycles of the seasons, which is lovely. Right now we're seeing the vines and things waking up for the new harvest, which is fun. The children are very busy. It's a lovely island to live on. There's lots of life on it throughout the year. But also, I mean, I think the wine and also work enables us to travel as well, which is great, which is something that we always wanted to see. We were discussing earlier, in the last few weeks, I've started to be able to see Greek islands that I've always wanted to go and visit. A lot of it obviously is connected with the wine business, but it's fantastic. And really, we really enjoy it.
Going with the cycle of the vintage, of the harvest, it seems to be like every part of the year has its own busyness. For me, in education, primarily the winter is busier, teaching art throughout the winter, and also working on the promotional aspect of the wine, which takes up whichever time of the year we're not cutting grapes or pressing wine, we're working on selling the wine, which is a huge creative process in itself. Bringing up the family, as you can see, which is not just 3 children, it's 4 children with a dog. We try to combine everything and try to work through all this, which is not easy, but it's full. Our lives are very full and they're very happy and very colorful lives.
all of this down here is the Rema. We're driving on the Rema now, so it's all vineyards. So these are very old vines, some of these, 60, 85-year-old vines. So where we're going now is a new vineyard that we're buying it at the moment, actually. We're just finishing. This is a new vineyard project that we've taken on. Our aim is essentially, as I was saying, is to take on vineyards that were grown before. So what we've seen, it's very clear that from the past, the older farmers and the grandfathers and the great-grandfathers, they knew where vines grew. In some parts of the island, it doesn't grow so well. But up here, in this part of the island, up in Hrusha, it's a very strong area for growing vines. As I said, this is it's a vineyard that hasn't been cultivated for a number of different years. So what I'm doing is I'm coming in and basically trying to pick out what we see as, take the weeds out, and then also try and pick through the best shoots. So pruning is an important part of what we do. Vines essentially, traditionally, would grow up trees so that they could get towards the sun. So they would grow very high, but they can strangle themselves. So what we do is we have to control between, obviously pruning down so that they produce the best fruit. We don't want to be producing too much fruit. Syros, as I was saying, is quite a harsh environment for growing vines, for growing fruit. It's very, very strong UV light. So some varieties of grapes will work and some don't. We're farming organically, so we will use organic sprays. We don't use any pesticides. And when we go through that, we could be talking about an organic copper spray and these things, which you can see on some of the leaves. There's a slight different colour. That's because last week we did some spraying. And then in the next week, what we'll start to do is, as I said, coming through and suckering. So taking off these small shoots that we don't want. What we like about farming the grapes on the islands, and the Kyklades in particular, is it's this idea of precision farming. So the people who grow their vines here, they've learned how to grow the vines here over the last hundreds and hundreds of years, and it's precision farming. So a farmer here in this area will farm differently to someone who's farming at the north of the island. It's completely different conditions. Our wines, we like to think, or we're seeing certainly at the moment, each of them have their own distinct personality, and that's coming from the distinct personality of the vineyard where the grapes are grown. You can hear the bees.
Yes.
They're keeping busy. I'm quite simple about the way that we do business. I mean, I'm not watching what anyone else is doing. I want to do something different. This idea of trends, I'm not that interested in trends. For us, our strength is to do something completely different. A lot of that is to do with the flavour that it gives to the grapes. Something, a different character than, a vineyard that will be 600 metres up there. It'll be completely different, completely different. And it might not work up there because of the wind. So down here it seems to work. We're inside the Usira Winery. Obviously we're a small winery, but what we do have is equipment essentially which is obviously top of the range, which is great. Each tank can hold up to 3,000 litres of wine at a time. So this year for this vintage, we had tank 3 full with white Serifiotico, so we've made about 4,000 bottles. And tank 1 was about half full. We've made about 2,000 bottles of our rosé with a variety called Focchiano, which is doing very well at the moment. The critics are being very kind, which is great. I'll introduce you to the 2 wines that we've made this year. So one, which I guess is our flagship wine, is our Serifiotico. It's a variety that has found its home on Syros. As I was saying earlier, Syros has very strong UV light, so not all varieties will grow well and adapt to the conditions on Syros, but Serifiotico as a variety has done, which is wonderful. And then in line with, again, with our philosophy of wanting to do something different, to make products that are different, we wanted to make a rosé, but I chose basically to try to find a rare indigenous Cycladic variety. And we came across Focchiano, which has been grown on the island of Naxos. So we've been incredibly happy with it, and it's thankfully it's been voted one of the top wines, one of the top rosés in the country. And ever since we put it into the Enorma wine show, it's been received incredibly well by critics, and we're excited that next month we've been chosen to take it to Italy to represent Greece. Time to set you free. Is it time to let it fly? Syros was under Phoenician rule, so the town was under, the Phoenicians were living there for a long time, and in their language, Usira means happy. They were very happy living here on Syros. And then, so this is potentially some of the origins from how Syros became known as Syros. But we decided to call the winery Usira because myself and my wife and the family now are incredibly happy living here and having our business, and we feel incredibly fortunate and lucky to be able to do so.